Hey, everybody. My name is Logan, and this is the first episode of the Logan Mitts Podcast. I wanted to do with this podcast what I did with this YouTube channel, and I got a basic plan together, turned on my camera, and hit record, and well, we're going to see what happens. I did pick out 3 topics that I do want to talk about today, just to kind of give you an idea and give myself an idea of what the kind of layout of this podcast will be and how I'm going to kind of navigate between topics. And this is, like I said, really just kind of a test run for me, but I hope you enjoy this first episode and come back for the second one. I don't have a schedule quite settled yet with how often I'm going to put out an episode. I hope twice a week, but I really don't know for sure because I really have to figure out how long it takes to plan everything, record, edit if I need to. The goal, though, is to make this eventually, hopefully soon, a live podcast as well. So hopefully there isn't too much editing to do with this one, but I did want to make it live so that we can, talk in real time about the topics that we're discussing. And that brings me to my next point about this podcast. If you want to send in any questions, comments, talk about the topics we're discussing, anything like that at all, you can send them in to this link right here, and we'll talk about them either on the current episode of the podcast or the following one. I haven't really, again, decided what that'll look like just because I spent so much time getting this link up and running. So you can go ahead, send in those comments, questions, anything at all, and we'll happily discuss those as well on the show because I want to make this a interactive and communal space as well. I don't want to just talk at you for however long each episode is. I want to make this engaging, make it fun. So let's not waste too much more time here. Let's go ahead and talk about these topics that I have. And the first one is about the second weekend box office performance of the slasher film Heart Eyes. I really enjoyed this movie. I thought it was a lot of fun. It's funny. It works as a slasher. It works as a rom-com. It's funny. It's gory. And Mason Gooding and Olivia Holt as the 2 leads are so good. You almost immediately root for them. It's a lot of fun. I had a great time watching this with an audience, and it debuted to, it was an okay debut. It wasn't anything spectacular, but, usually when a movie enters its second weekend, it is preparing to take a drop because most people who go to see a film see it in its opening weekend. Well, this one is a bit of an exception. Heart Eyes actually increased in its second weekend by a pretty significant 18%. Over on Screen Rant here, they talk about this performance. Let's go over here. The third smallest week 2 drop of all time for any slasher movie that opened in 600 theaters or more, falling behind only 2022 surprise hit Terrifier 2, which increased by 28%, and the 1996 franchise kickstarting Zeitgeist Smash Scream, which increased by 42.8%. So, while Heart Eyes didn't, have a massive second weekend, this is still impressive regardless. And there are a few components that really need to be taken into consideration about this second weekend. And the big one is that Valentine's Day this year fell on a Friday. And, well, again, there aren't many rom-coms in theaters right now, just straight rom-coms. So why not go watch a horror film that is part rom-com, part slasher, and with With respectable reviews and a strong audience score for a horror film, what better way to spend Valentine's Day than to go have a nice dinner and go watch a horror movie with an audience, which is a very fun thing to do. So I think that is a big component to this film succeeding in its second weekend. And I understand why they released it 1 week before Valentine's Day, with Captain America hitting theaters on Valentine's Day. It's better to get ahead of that massive film than to open the same day and kind of get lost in the fold of it all. So I understand why they did open this film a week before, and it actually looks like it worked in their favor, because now I'm very curious to see how word of mouth is going to help this film and what its third weekend drop is going to look like, if there is a drop at all. I mean, I think by this point we're going to see one. It's just how significant will it be? That is something I'm now very curious to see. So, yeah, Heart Eyes had a pretty strong second weekend at the box office, increasing 18%. Not something that too many films do. Have you seen the film? Let me know in the comments down below. And, well, let's move on to our second topic here, and that is that Dogman and Companion are both hitting PVOD just 18 days after they release in theaters. And Dogman has the second biggest opening in January for an animated film, only behind Kung Fu Panda 3. It is still holding in the top 5 at the box office domestically, and it has made worldwide about $87 million on a $40 million budget. And this movie is hitting PVOD on February 18th. Let that sink in. Companion, while not performing quite as well at the box office, I mean, they are targeting two different audiences, and Companion is an R-rated sci-fi movie, so it was never expected to be a massive film, and it hasn't quite connected as much as I had hoped it would in theaters. But even that film, which it was announced about a week ago that movie would be hitting PVOD, so people that would be going to see that film that weekend, which I guess would have been Valentine's Day weekend, are now just going to, I mean, they're going to wait until the film hits PVOD, which is now tomorrow, if you're watching this on the day I upload it. So it's always baffling to me when a film is just kind of pushed off onto PVOD in such a short amount of time after it releases. Especially with Companion, it never really had the time to find an audience, and conversations around the movie have been good. Nobody's really disliking the movie. I mean, on social media and everywhere. I mean, the film is being talked about in a positive light. The audience score is good for the movie. The critic score is good for the movie. So it's really unfortunate to see this movie just kind of being pushed off onto PVOD. And Dogman, which really doesn't have any competition at the box office until Snow White in mid-March. So I don't know why Universal wouldn't want to try and capitalize on that. I mean, its biggest competition was Mufasa and Sonic, and both of those are losing theaters, starting to make the transition onto PVOD and streaming. Sonic 3 hits Paramount Plus on the 18th, and Mufasa is dropping on PVOD on the 18th. So those movies are winding down. Universal would have had plenty of time at the theater all to itself, really, until Snow White. And I know Paddington in Peru is in theaters now, but that isn't quite connecting with families like Dogman is. So, I mean, it's unfortunate to think of what the future of this movie could be at the box office and in the marketplace for an entire other month with minimal competition. And I understand, when we were coming out of the pandemic and having these shortened theatrical windows to kind of figure out what the the landscape of the movie going business was going to look like after theaters being closed for so long. I can understand a more of a shortened theatrical window, but I mean, we're almost 5 years removed from all of that, and we are seeing studios from time to time experiment with those longer theatrical windows, and it's not really experimenting at this point. It's just going back to the norm before COVID. I mean, Disney is doing pretty well with all of their major films, and even some of their smaller films. They're really holding these in theaters. I mean, think about Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes last year, or Alien Romulus. Those were in theaters for a few months before they dropped on PVOD and streaming. And, Mufasa is just now hitting PVOD, and that came out before Christmas. Moana 2 was exclusively in theaters for a while, and even A Complete Unknown, which is a Searchlight film, is still exclusively in theaters. And I know that movie is having a bit of a push given its continuous awards nominations, and people wanting to go check the film out as we progress through awards season. But it's just kind of baffling still that we're seeing these short theatrical windows. Paramount with Sonic 3, that just hit premium video on demand a couple of weeks ago and hitting streaming tomorrow. So all of the studios are kind of in these different places when it comes to the theatrical window. Disney is definitely doing the best. Universal, with some of their larger films, will give those longer windows. But why have we not gone back to the standard of this expanded theatrical window? Now, I don't think that a movie like Companion should have as long of a theatrical window as, say, something like Captain America Brave New World, but I do think that both of these should be extended to give films a proper lifespan at the theater. And I mean, if a movie really crashes and burns, that's an exception. That's a completely different thing. But even then, I don't think that 15 to 20 days is just quite enough. I don't know. There's a lot that goes along with this conversation, and it's a much bigger conversation, but it is still disappointing to see both of these films just drop on streaming services. Not streaming services, but to be available to purchase or rent from home already. What do you think? Did you see either of these films or both of these films? Did you enjoy them? And what do you think about these theatrical windows? Let me know in the comments down below. Now, for the third topic, we are going to address Captain America, Brave New World, and the unfortunate conversation surrounding this movie, and that is the Cinemascore for the film and its future at the box office. So, from Collider here, if I can pull this article up, here we go. They talk about the Cinemascore and compare it to other recent Marvel films. According to Cinemascore, which polls audiences on the basis of how likely they are to recommend a film to others, Brave New World earned a B-. This is terrible for the superhero genre, which typically gets high grades from audiences. It's much lower than the A Cinemascore earned by Captain America: The Winter Soldier and Captain America: Civil War, and also below the A- earned by Captain America: The First Avenger. Brave New World's rating is on par with poorly received superhero titles such as the recent Venom: The Last Dance and the widely derided X-Men film Dark Phoenix. Brave New World also falls short of recent Marvel misfires such as Eternals, The Marvels, and Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, each of which earned B grades and were proceeded to have underperformed at the box office. The Marvels, in fact, is the lowest earning MCU film of all time. It goes on from there. So Brave New World opened to a 3-day of around $88 million, and just coming in a hair over the $100 million mark for the 4-day. But for the purpose of this video, we're just really going to talk about that 3-day and that B- Cinemascore. Now, when I heard this at first, I was shocked, and my mind immediately sifted through a bunch of other Marvel films that I would have assumed would have a lower grade, and I'm still kind of surprised that Captain America is now the lowest rated film on Cinemascore. And Cinemascore is a very telling sign of the lifespan of a movie at the box office and the audience perception of the film, and how likely they are to, well, like that article said, recommend it to others. Now, an $88 million opening is roughly around, I think I have it up here on my computer. Yes, Thor the Dark World opened to 85.7, and Doctor Strange opened to 85. Both films went on to gross 644 and 677 respectively. Now, I don't think that we will see Captain America Brave New World reach that $600 mark, particularly now with that Cinemascore, but I'm very interested to see what the future of this film looks like. Reception surrounding the film is all over the place, admittedly. I mean, some people are really enjoying it, some aren't. One thing that I think affected that Cinemascore, and this is just pure speculation, is the lack of Red Hulk in this movie, given how heavily he was marketed for the film. I mean, if you had seen the marketing for the film, you would have assumed that he was a major player in the story and that you would see him several times. And, well, he's really not in the movie too much. Another component that I think plays a factor here is that this is really a sequel to The Incredible Hulk from 2008, which is an interesting choice. And so your main villain, who remembers him? I mean, honestly, who remembers the antagonist from The Incredible Hulk from quite a while ago? And how many people who are watching Captain America Brave New World watched The Incredible Hulk? Or, more importantly, Falcon and the Winter Soldier on Disney Plus. How much of the average movie-going audience watched that show and has watched and remembers The Incredible Hulk? I've talked to a couple people who were quite confused throughout the movie because they hadn't watched Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and as a result, really didn't have too much fun with the movie and just kind of thought it was kind of all over the place, which is another conversation. But audiences, I don't think, are too pleased with this movie, and the second weekend box office is going to be the telling sign of the future of this movie. Will it have a solid hold, or will it have a more significant drop? Doesn't have much competition for quite a few weeks, so it has a lot of the marketplace to itself and can thrive here. But with that B- Cinemascore lingering, what is the word of mouth for this film? I mean, who are people really telling their friends and family to go out and see this film next weekend? I don't know. I really don't. I'm just more curious than anything, and we can sit here and talk all day about what we think, led to this, or what we think the future of this movie is going to look like, but we're really not going to know until the end of next weekend and those box office numbers come in. I'm very curious to see how this all shakes out with this movie. What I think Marvel needs to do at this point is just fully embrace Thunderbolts and Fantastic Four. Both of those movies look really good. I enjoyed the Fantastic Four themed IMAX intro before Captain America Brave New World. That was a lot of fun. That got a surprising pop from audiences leading up to Brave New World. I mean, people were chatting about that pretty heavily as it ended and the Marvel logo began for Brave New World. So I think that could be a really big hit for Marvel. I'm excited for it, and it feels like other people are too. And that excitement just really wasn't there for Brave New World. I don't know. It was just it was a movie that was released, and I wish it had, a bigger audience. But that's just kind of the state of Marvel these days. It's very hit or miss. But yeah, we will likely be discussing the second weekend box office of Captain America quite a bit next week as numbers come in and the future of this movie really comes into focus. So, did you see Captain America Brave New World this weekend? Let me know in the comments. And, well, that's all I got for you in this first episode of the podcast. Like I said, I was anticipating this to be a little messy and not quite as polished as I hope it to be in the future. And I think I was a little correct. I definitely hit a couple wrong buttons. You won't see that because I'm definitely going to edit a few bits of this video. But for the most part, like I said in the beginning, I wanted to keep it pretty unrefined, actually, because like I said, the goal is for this to become a live podcast in the future. And, well, the only way to get better with that is to make mistakes. So I'm going to leave a couple mistakes in here just to make it feel a little more natural, but this podcast will get more refined and more polished as I get a little more experience with everything. And yeah, that's, like I said, all I got. If you are new to my channel, you can hit that subscribe button to see more film content from me. Once again, thank you so much for sticking around through this first episode of the podcast, and as always, I will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.